Hydrotreated vegetable oil, also known as HVO, is a term many might have heard or are already familiar with amid the energy transition. But what impact will HVO have on the fuel retail and convenience industry? Listen as we discuss all things HVO with DFS Sales Director Jeroen van Pelt, DFS Business Development Director of ATG Fergus Heading, and Senior Product Marketing Manager Dan Large. So, hydrotreated vegetable oil, also known as HVO, is a term many might have heard over the last few years amid the energy transition. But what impact will HVO have on the future of fuel retail and the convenience industry? Described as 100% biodegradable and responsibly sourced, HVO is an innovative fuel developed to help reduce dependence on standard diesel. In fact, it can be used as a direct drop-in replacement for standard diesel and other impressive and rapid carbon reduction. But is HVO the transformative alternative fuel of the future? Let's find out. Thank you all for joining me today.
Very welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we'll just jump right in. What is the reason HVO is now becoming more common or popular in fuel retail?
We see HVO's popularity increasing across Europe, mainly driven by environmental reasons. Also its performance, especially around cold climates. It's much better performer in the Nordics, and people being just conscious about the change to a cleaner fuel and better for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I focus on the tankage element of it. So for us, we do see an increase. We don't see a lot of changes needed at the equipment level. And we do see companies here in Ireland, for example, promoting it now in the retail environment. But it has been about for a long time, around 2001.
We also see that many of our end users and customers, they have more legislations to comply to, basically saying the carbon footprint of trucks or diesel vehicles. They need to register everything these days and also make sure that they show a decrease of the carbon footprint over year. So this is why solutions like HVO helps them to reach those goals. So I think that's why it's also increasing over the last couple of years quite rapidly.
Yeah.
So we also hear a lot about the transition to clean energy, but working in the retail environment, we know that a transition to full clean energy is not an overnight thing. There's a lot of investment that has to go into it. There's a lot of user behavior that would need to be changed. So something like HVO, where it's bringing a cleaner fuel to traditional diesel vehicles, is seen as a nice bridge into that cleaner environmental world. And in dispensers, we are also experiencing increased requests. We're seeing increased conversations regarding HVO, and the good news is our dispensers are already ready for HVO. They have been for a long time, and it's a good clean swap for traditional diesels.
Yeah.
So Dan, no changes required. They just use the standard one.
Yeah. So the dispenser is all set, ready to go from the factory. Effectively, if you're changing on site, there's some cleaning of seals if you've had traditional diesel in the dispenser, but generally no, the hydraulic arrangements that we use have been capable of doing HVO through them for a long time. So you can even select it as you're ordering. You tell us that it's a HVO and no changes.
It's almost as if HVO adoption is offering a practical route to decarbonisation without disruption to a site, which I think is something that's key for a lot of retailers amid the energy transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have the choice to make that change. Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
I can. You have a question here for us about the difference between I and diesel. I can speak from first-hand experience. My wife has a diesel car that's now running HVO. No difference in performance, no difference in the experience on the station. It fills up exactly the same, it drives the same, and we made no changes to it.
Yeah.
It is a French diesel car.
That's important because I think a lot of people might assume, they're wrongly, that similar to certain clean energies available out there, that there would be a different way to refuel your vehicle, or you would need to have a certain knowledge or awareness. So I think that's important, the fact that you can do it just
but
as
also when ethanol-based fuels were introduced, it was a big discussion around is the car compatible with the product actually? And for all the cars, there was always a discussion if it's possible, yes or no. With HVO, there is no discussion around that. So it's basically adopted by also the car industry saying it's a drop-in solution in their perspective as well. So it takes away a lot of problems and a lot of discussion.
One of the bigger changes in the past that everybody of a certain vintage will remember is when we changed from leaded fuel to unleaded fuel.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of vehicles that needed some element of work done so they could use it. However, with HVO, it's just fill it up and drive it away.
And that's a really important aspect. So if you look at it from the perspective of the user of the fuel, so not the retail station or the people selling HVO, if you look at it purely from the user, not having to change a single thing whilst also being able to have a cleaner fuel in their vehicle, you will likely see that that will become even more popular because people are considerate in terms of being environmental. However, user behavior is a massive hurdle to overcome for clean energies. So something that is a drop-in solution for the user, that's that.
And in terms of, I suppose one of the questions that majority of people will have is HVO and diesel interchangeable in a standard diesel vehicle today? Or is that something that's a future state?
It's completely compatible. From a vehicle perspective, there's no difference.
You can also mix and match, if I may call it like that. So you can either fill up one day with HVO, next day with standard diesel. It doesn't have a difference on the performance of the car. So that makes it also very acceptable.
From an oil company perspective and the delivery cycle, even the trucks that are delivering the fuel are all HVO. So it's everybody, as Dan mentioned, doing their part for the environmental element and the carbon footprint. And it's an easy step in and people feel good about that. So.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads quite nicely into my next question in terms of, because obviously we've seen with EV, hydrogen, LNG, CNG, they're starting to become more popular across Europe. However, we are not seeing them in standard everyday service stations or fuel sites. So I know that you mentioned your wife, Fergus, and how she already uses HVO. How widespread is a HVO offering? Is it something that people will start to see more regularly on their everyday fuel site, or is this something that's going to increase adoption over the next couple of years?
The popularity is increasing, and there is a European directive that all diesel stations move to HVO by 2030, I think it is, or at least try to move it. For us, it's just like the good word is spreading. It's now available on the vast majority of sites here in Ireland and across Europe. I've also recently been in Australia and Asia, and it's available there as well. So it's becoming available everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a little bit driven also by the suppliers, like you say, in UK and Ireland, we see that the adoption rate is much higher because we have some providers or suppliers that are really pushing it as well. So they're providing it to the forecourts. Same we see in the Nordics. It's now in Northwest Europe is popping up again. So I think South Europe is still a little bit behind there, but it will come.
Yeah.
It will come.
I think that's driven by one of the other questions that Sarah has for us is what's the benefits? We've all touched about reducing the carbon footprint and the emissions and the drop-in replacement, so it's a straight drop-in, but also the cold weather performance. And across Europe, that's something that we experience with diesel, and we're not adding anything into it. So even for the retailer, it's very easy to get adopted right away.
And I think the transition to HVO, the adoption rate for something like a HVO is likely to be much swifter than the adoption rate for your LNGs, your CNGs, hydrogen. So all of those clean fuels require two things: more investment than the site may have. So if we look at a dispenser, if it's already there, they can run HVO through it. They're not spending to completely change a site. And as touched on earlier, user behavior. So all of those clean energies require the user to first have the vehicle to fill with the clean fuel, but they have to do something different to then get their energy. HVO, I feel the adoption will be much quicker because they're filling how they normally fill. The sites don't have to change anything at all. There might be some cleaning, but they don't have to change anything at all, which would lead to a higher popularity. And
Yeah.
We're certainly seeing more and more requests across Northern Europe, as Jeroen had said, less so in the south, but showing the benefits. I expect that we would start to see those requests in the near future as well.
Yeah. I think the kind of mix and match that Jeroen had mentioned in terms of HVO and standard diesel, and also the kind of almost like seamless integration, Dan, that you have touched on, are some huge benefits of HVO investment.
One of the biggest drivers is the customer experience. When you change to the other alternative fuels, there's a change in your behavior, especially around EV and being able to charge your vehicle. And the alternative fuels like hydrogen will require a change in your daily life and how you fill up. With HVO, it's exactly the same as it was yesterday using diesel. So that's a huge advantage for that. And I think Dan discussed it earlier, that step into the clean energy transition.
Yeah.
This is an easy step into it, and then we'll make the next step.
And we also have to remember, when it comes to transitions to cleaner on traditional fuels, I mean, E is now pretty much the standard across Europe for petrols. Obviously, there was more conversation around that transition because of the vehicles, whereas here with HVO, not having to check or change the vehicles, it is a bigger benefit for it. But now every site has E10. It's difficult to get, E5 that you might need for your classic cars, but every site, and I'm assuming that's across Europe, is E10. So cleaner fuels can be introduced but they go much quicker when it's using traditional user behavior and methods on the forecourt.
Yeah. It's almost like people might not even remember a time when E5 was available because E10 is just the norm. And I suppose that, based on the discussion that we're having today, that could be what HVO is in the next couple of years. It's just standard on sites. People are using it, and every day they can't even remember what they used beforehand. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. In the past, there was a flexi fuel. So you had to have a car that had flexi fuel. I think there was only two manufacturers, Volvo and Ford, actually had it. But that was introduced, which was an ethanol blended fuel, and then it sort of went away very quickly. However, with this, we're not making any changes to the vehicle, the dispenser, the storage, the wet stock management services. Everything stays exactly the same, and they just move on.
One of the things that has come up when you talk about or hear about HVO is the price comparison. Now, is the price comparison with diesel substantial, or is it something the average everyday motorist wouldn't really notice, or is there cost implications for retailers as well?
There is a small premium where it is slightly more expensive. However, there is that environmental conscious element, and we're doing our part for the world and, protecting it for the future. And there is a drive across Europe to have it parity with diesel, and that's something that I think oil companies and retailers are campaigning for. And the wider the adoption, the more visibility will happen, and it will become that in price. The more it's available. Competition is the best thing to drive the pricing.
Yeah. I think the same can be said for a lot of the clean energies. Once they were originally introduced, the prices were, you couldn't even compare them with standard conventional fuel because they were brand new, there wasn't a lot of adoption, so the price was high. However, the more that it's become integrated in everyday life, the drop that you've seen in those prices, and I think it's important to note from what you said to Fergus that will eventually become the norm for HVO as well, just depending on widespread adoption. I know we kind of touched on this earlier, and Jeroen, you had mentioned, and Dan and Fergus also touched on this, on kind of popularity across Europe. Are you seeing more countries already invest in this, or is it kind of equal across the board?
There are some countries that are slightly ahead of the rest, and that is mainly because they want to make at least a carbon footprint awareness thing. They drive that basically to increase the adoption of like HVO fuels to reduce the carbon footprint. And with that also they put in legislation to register and basically account for your carbon footprint, etc. So this is also where we have in one of our solutions from a point of sale, we have the possibility now to, of course, if you get your ticket, it says or your receipt, basically you said, okay, how much fuel you have, HVO, and what was the carbon footprint reduction, so that they can
Okay.
take that into account in their accountancy checks, that kind of stuff. And that helps in driving it forward. And that's why I think in Northwest Europe, you see that already in place.
Yep.
And that's why you see it there already a little bit more adopted than in the rest of Europe. But I think, yeah, Europe being one legislation area, basically, that should come in other countries as well.
Yeah.
And we see also a few big retailers or suppliers pushing it as well. And they are predominantly at this moment in Northwest Europe region, so that helps as well.
Yeah. So it's something people will start to see and hear more of as time progresses. We briefly touched on this earlier, and Dan, I'll come to you. Would HVO adoption disrupt a fuel retail business? Or is it just a case of you make the investment decision and it's a seamless integration?
So I think what we're saying here, and certainly from, sites using DFS equipment, is that it's a seamless drop-in solution. So the investment is minimal. Obviously, as we discussed, there is a premium on the fuel itself, but sites using DFS equipment is completely just seamless. Drop in and away you go. Change what it says on your dispensers to promote your HVO, and seamless.
Good to go.
Same for the other elements from the tank gauge, the management perspective. It's as simple as changing the name, the label, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think the same is from the wet stock management.
Exactly the same. It's a liquid fuel that basically complies to all the boundary conditions. So we treat it as any normal product from a wet stock reconciliation perspective. So.
Yeah. And in terms of, we've touched on this on previous podcast episodes, but connectivity is still incredibly important for fuel sites as we're moving forward. And how does HVO fit into that? Does everything still work and connect together in terms of products and solutions for that type of fuel?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah. Like I said,
there's no difference.
Yeah.
You see that in your reports as a separate product, of course. So we can make a distinguish between normal diesel, regular diesel, and HVO diesel. No problem whatsoever.
If they swap over the storage tanks to HVO, change a couple of labels and naming convention, and tomorrow it's greener, better for the environment, and ticking all the boxes.
Yeah.
And same with dispensers. No change to the connectivity. There might be a product name change in the systems that you're using to connect to dispensers, but nothing. It's treated as any other diesel for the dispenser.
Yeah. And so from everything we've talked about today, how easy would it be for a retailer to adopt HVO? Is there anything that they really should take into consideration before they make that decision?
I think the most of its attention should go to the supply and demand area. So not on the equipment sides, how to get enough supplies, because no retailer want to run out of stock, of course.
Yes.
But I think that's more or less it, logistic-wise.
And maybe, as Dan touched on, maybe a little bit of cleaning and some filter checking before switching it, and then that's it. Go for it. Ask your local support company to change the product names and apply some new stickers, and we're good to go.
And I wonder, do any of you have an example of a retailer investing in HVO and the time it takes for them to have that on their site and up and running for their customers?
There is a company here in Ireland, Certas, part of the DCC group, and they have it available on other sites and actively promote it. From a Dover perspective, we finished the site for them in the summer last year, which is near a main shopping centre and the M50, which is the motorway around Dublin, and it was HVO from day one.
Yeah. I think for a product, it's more or less a normal product changeover. So it's prepared properly, of course, with the right product preparations done. It is like any other product, a seamless changeover.
Yeah. And roughly, how long would that take if they were changing from standard diesel to HVO? Is that like a week, couple of weeks, months?
Again, I think it depends on the supply part, because to change over a product on a site is a matter of minutes, seconds, hours, maybe maximum. That's it. It's all coming back to the physical product, taking the old product out of the tank, maybe have some cleaning work done or not. That's a decision of the retailer, and then drop the new product and make the product changeover in the systems. What is touch of a button, basically.
The impact is minimal.
Yeah.
Very impressive when you think about it, because normally you would imagine, oh, this is maybe going to take me a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, and which might depend on supply and demand, as you mentioned, Jeroen, but realistically, it could be as instant as a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on this throughout, but how can DFS support HVO adoption? Dan, I'll come to you first. Is there a particular make and model of dispenser that retailers should be considering, or is it across the board?
So it's across the board. I mean, if a retailer's looking at HVO, we have the solutions and the expertise to discuss HVO with them and guide them to what suits them. But from a dispenser side, all of our product is capable of running HVO through it. So again, it's down to site preferences and needs, and each site may vary a little bit, and that's where we're here to support them getting the correct solution for their particular needs.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And then Fergus, just coming to you next from an ATG perspective, how can we support from DFS?
It's very easy for us. If the customer has tank gauging from the ProGauge family, uniquely we use the same product flow for both gasoline and diesel-based products, including HVO. So no changes are required other than changing the name, the product label, and that's it.
And then you're doing from a wet stock management point of view?
From a wet stock management, it's more or less the same. So if we will have to create a new product for the customer, of course, and need to know when the changeover is done. But then it's basically visible in the fuel reconciliation part of our solution, including maybe some special reports on request. But that's just as we do for any normal product. On the wider solution perspective, there is even the opportunity, like I said, with point of sales to adjust your receipt, basically to show also what is the advantage of the HVO in the carbon footprint message on the receipt. So that is something additional, but again, it's part of the standard solution package we have. So it's a matter of configuration and implementation. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think it's HVO is one to watch, and I think we will start to see it more and more. And I don't know if a lot of people listening will understand that the transition to HVO is as easy as you want it to be, for example, and you can add whatever special request that you were mentioning, Jeroen, to it, but the standard switch seems very simple.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see how our technology can cater to the rise in HVO's popularity over the coming years.
I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time today. That was really insightful, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to HVO, the alternative fuel of the future. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Jeroen, Fergus and Dan. If you'd like to support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media or leave a review. To catch the latest from Dover Fueling Solutions, you can follow us on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.doverfuelingsolutions.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next month where we continue to fuel the conversation.